The question is that the House do agree with the Commons in their Amendment 1, Motion 1A. Lord Moylan.
My Lords, I rise to move Amendment 1A and to speak to the other amendments in this group, which I have, the other motions in this group that I have tabled. My Lords, I hope that noble Lords will forgive me for being distressingly frank. The background to this bill is the government's payment of the Danegeld, if you like, to its friends in the trades unions and in a network of left-wing local authorities who have seized for many years with resentment at the success of the private sector and want to see them effectively eliminated from the provision of public transport services in this country. The same motivation that lay behind the Railway Passenger Services Bill that we passed before Christmas. And that is why the Conservative group and the House as a whole supported, on report, amending the bill to include a purpose to which the government could be held to account as to its effect, putting passengers and their needs at the heart of the bill from the outset. The government, using its majority in the other place, has deleted that purpose. There is no standard, there is no accountability, there is no measure to which we can turn from the text of the bill itself and say to the government, you promised you would achieve this by these measures, you promised you would achieve this, you promised that this was the purpose you were setting out to effect, and we can hold you to it. None of that is there. This bill simply stands on its own, a great experiment with the provision of public transport, but no accountability for the government behind it. That is the simple fact behind Amendment 1A. Now, as it happens, I'm not proposing to test the opinion of the House on Amendment 1A, but let me turn then to the other two amendments, which relate to 8A. Now, 8A is a motion that covers two clauses that have been removed from the bill, two subsections. They were subsections 5 and 6 to clause 14, which your lordships added on report, and they added them for a very good reason. The first related to subsection 5, related to the £2 bus fare cap. The fact of the matter is that not only had the Conservatives pledged to keep this going for another year, the government removed it. Of course it had an effect. Of course it had an effect, putting the fare cap up by 50%. It had an effect on the most vulnerable people, because it is the most vulnerable people, those who are low-paid workers, who depend most on buses for getting to work, for example. And yet the government says we don't need to consider that. We're going to look at the effect of the £3 fare cap, so we don't need to consider the effect of the £2 fare cap. What is the point of looking at the effect of the £3 fare cap unless you can compare it with the effect of the £2 fare cap? Because comparison is the purpose, the very purpose of that study. And so, my lords, the government having made no concession, it could easily have said, we will do something on the £2 fare cap as part of our review of the £3 fare cap. The government having made no concession on that, I will, when the time comes, be testing the opinion of the House on that. And finally, on the SEND review, we talk about vulnerability. I remind noble lords again of the fragile structure of the services on which SEND pupils depend. Now, it may be that the government's going to resolve all this in the long term. There won't be any distinct SEND pupils, because, as the Minister says, they're all going to be mainstreamed somehow so that they won't need travel. But the fact is, today they do, and they rely on a network of small providers who are engaged by local authorities, small providers who depend on part-time workers, many of whom earn less in each year than was required to be eligible for national insurance contributions. And because of the drop in the threshold from roughly £10,000 to £5,000, are now caught by those national insurance contributions, and it is having a devastating effect on the cash flow of those small operators, many of whom are now refusing contracts or withdrawing from contracts where they're permitted to do so by the terms of those contracts. And the only result of that is going to be higher costs for local authorities, higher costs with fewer providers. The worst possible outcome. The government says it has provided money to local authorities to cover those costs. And I don't, of course, it has provided money. I'm not doubting what the government says. As a matter of fact, it has provided money to local authorities. So what is the problem with a review that will actually identify whether that provision has been directed towards those local providers, that it is working, that it has been effective, that the sum involved is correct? There can be no problem with such a review except the government is keen to hide something. So again, I think when it comes to the time, 8A, which captures both of those subjects, ask noble lords to bear that in mind. 8A has two parts to it, send and the £2 fare cap are both comprised in that motion. When it comes to 8A, on both of those grounds, I will be testing the opinion of the House. I think it is time that the government actually listened to what this House says when it sends amendments, modest amendments, simply calling for reviews to the other place. The government should actually start listening and not simply turn everything down as a matter of course, which increasingly seems to be the way in which it wants to conduct itself. My Lords, I beg to move my motion 1A.